So, my attempt is to kind of just bring some attention into the amount of money and the key players, key institutions putting money into coal projects and renewable projects in India. Part of this presentation is also the work in progress done by Rajesh and others in CFA, looking at the coal financiers working, the institutions investing in coal projects between 2005 and 2019. It's still work in progress, but I've taken parts of it. Out of the projects that we are looking, 46% is private. Before that, I should say that between this period, 2005 March and 2005 April and 2019 March, there are around 700 projects which are approved by the government. We have taken only the projects which are 1,000 megawatt and up. So that's around 140. So this data is around is about the 140 projects that we are talking about. Within that 140 projects, what we are seeing is 46% of them are private players, 24% state owned projects, and 30% by the central government. If you look at the money, 93% of the money is coming from Indian sources, Indian commercial banks, as well as the non-banking financial companies in India. And it's only 7% which comes from all external commercial borrowings put together. So just looking at the numbers, public sector banks, you can see SBI is the first one. The name is missing there. SBI is the one which is like miles ahead of the rest of the people. It's almost like the total of the another 20 banks and SBI will be kind of still ahead of it. The number in the red is the number of projects that they have kind of invested, and that's the money in crores. If you look at the private sector, it's quite small. ICICI is the biggest one with 13,000. Again, the same story, you add up the rest of the people, ICICI would be kind of still ahead. But when you look at the non-banking financial company, these are minions. PFC and REC is like quite, that's the purpose for which they are kind of created as well. So it's justified. It's not just banks, commercial banks putting. Power Finance Corporation and Rural Electrification Corporations are made for investing into it, but their investments are like quite ahead, 1,82,000 and 1,93,000 crore rupee we are talking about. The rest of the players are comparatively quite small. When it comes to external commercial borrowings, China and Japan lead the pack. China particularly quite a bit in multiple, China Exim Bank, Chinese Development Bank, ICBC, there are multiple Chinese banks involved in it. The ADB and the IFC we are talking is about the older projects. They don't have any investments in coal per se, directly coal. I'll come back to that later. But directly they are not kind of investing in coal anymore. When you look at the renewable projects, we have looked at it for the last 5 years. In 2014, in 60 projects, there were around 37,000 crore rupee, and then 38. The year 2016 saw a large amount of investment. And that's interestingly, if you look into the details, you can see that's when the acquisition started in that sector. The initial 2 years, what we have seen is project financing, where people are generating, putting money into projects which are generating kind of capacity. In 2016, it doesn't mean that this large amount of investment led to more generation of power. It also kind of refinancing, acquisition, and all those things. But there are a lot of, the money was flowing quite abundantly into it, and we captured that. In the report which was released yesterday and last year, these numbers would kind of vary from them because the report that we released yesterday was the investment on projects particularly. This is about the total kind of flow of money in that sector. So in 2017, we had 29, but again in 2018, we see a large surge in the investment. 19 figures we don't have fully, but what we have seen so far in the first 6 months at least is going the 2018 way. So there's a lot of money kind of going. With acquisition, I mean, it can lead to two inferences. One could be that the sector is under stress. It's already kind of facing stress and hence it's happening. I mean, it also could be that this is a business model somebody want to kind of promote. I mean, you develop greenfield projects. I mean, you kind of develop it, you get it up and running and then sell it to big parties, and the Adanis and the Reliances will be kind of quite happy to kind of acquire such kind of performing assets is what. So it could kind of lead into that. We don't have a full analysis of that as such. What we are seeing is in the national finance particularly, yesterday we heard from Paranjoy saying that 40% of the NPA that the national banks are incurring are from the power sector. That's roughly around 4 lakh crore rupees, I mean, in that power sector alone. And Franco would be a better person to kind of say it's the haircuts that the banks are taking through the IBC process, it's up to 80%. So 80% of the money is kind of just drowned in this. 2018, we are seeing a huge lull in the coal projects. I mean, above 1,000 megawatt, we have seen only one project out there. We haven't kind of seen much, but we don't know whether it's any indication of a pattern which is emerging. I mean, until 2017, we had a large amount of investments, around 60,000 to 70,000 per year until 2017. The banks continue to kind of act as if nothing has happened. I mean, out of many critics, one of the things that we were saying is that the banks are investing without their own social and environmental safeguard policies. They continue to kind of invest without any of them. And despite all this kind of investments, there aren't any much demand for a transparent and accountable system within the banks. NPAs, Franco yesterday mentioned about it, NPAs are also leading to many other burden on the, it's not only that our own money is kind of drowned in bad projects, it's also kind of leading the banks charging the customers in multiple ways, including bank charges for anything and everything. And quite gruesome is the charges that they levy against people who are not able to maintain a minimum balance in the banks. In the parliament, the minister said between 2014 and 2018, the amount of money they collected as minimum balance fine alone is 12,000 crore rupees. And we all know that the people who cannot kind of keep a minimum balance are the poor. So you're penalizing the poor in a way so that assuming that you can recover at least part of this kind of bad money which has kind of gone. And not only that, our money is kind of going, I mean, even budgetary allocations are done to recapitalize the banks. So last budgetary speech, the minister said about 70,000 crore rupee recapitalization as a part of around 2 lakh crore rupee eventually to recapitalize the banks because they kind of lost money in bad projects. So our money is gone. Apart from that, I mean, the money which could have been kind of invested in schools or hospitals or roads or whatever is also kind of pumped back into the system sector so that, I mean, it doesn't kind of collapse. In the international, I mean, in the external banks, what we are seeing is a huge surge in the bilateral investment, particularly by China, and second by Japan, investing large amount of money. Yesterday, Ashok Rauji said about the Chinese-made equipments coming into it. A part of their investment, part of the investment of the Exim Bank is also that their machinery will be kind of used. So it's connected to what he was kind of saying yesterday. As I was saying earlier, multilateral development banks invested zero money in the past many years, but they have also kind of reinvented themselves. They have kind of started investing large amount of money in associated facilities like the T&D, I mean transmission and distribution lines, and even ports and other things. So Adani's port in Mundra is partly funded by IFC through the financial intermediary. If you look at World Bank's T&D data, in the last 10 years, they have also almost invested $2.8 billion into T&D alone, while they have not kind of invested money into the coal projects. And this is also true with the new banks like AIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, where only 2 energy projects that they have invested in India is on T&D and not on any coal projects. And there is increasing use of financial intermediaries by this multilateral development banks when it comes to investing in India. Not only IFC and ADB, but even AIB is kind of investing a large amount of money through financial intermediary. Just to kind of explain in one line what financial intermediary is, these banks, IFC for example, will give a large amount of money to a financial intermediary, and thereafter that financial intermediary like IDFC or IL&FS or whoever, and that financial intermediary is then free to kind of invest in so many different projects. And we will never be able to kind of trace that because there is no transparency. The transparency ends when IFC's money reaches the financial intermediary. Thereafter, there isn't any transparency. In IFC, at least, things are slightly changing in they putting more information about the financial intermediary investments, but not in any other banks. And so on.